Hi everyone, I'm Tamsin from Babbling Books, and today I wanted to share with you something which a few people have been asking me questions about during the time that I've had my Bookstagram, now my BookTube channel, and also on Twitter and on Goodreads, which is, Tam, how do you read so many books at the same time? Isn't that confusing? So I wanted to give you some tips on how I've come to be a multiple book reader, how I manage my TBR, and also how I manage my currently reading lists. And just something which might be useful for you in trying to read multiple different books at the same time, not getting too confused, and still actually making your way through all of those books. So hopefully this is helpful. If you're already a multiple book reader, let me know in the comments below whether or not your tips and tricks are different to mine, similar, whether we use the same techniques. And if you're a single book reader, let me know why. I'd love to know what motivates you to read and whether or not you find there are any challenges associated with reading just one book at a time. So my very first tip is ease yourself into it. If you're only used to reading one book at a time, make sure that you don't suddenly start picking up like 5 different books at the same time. You're going to get overwhelmed and confused. You might get frustrated with yourself, and you definitely don't want to be doing anything that's going to put you off reading. The main goal here is to read and to have fun. That's why we read, right? We read because we love stories and we love learning about the world or experiencing new things. Readers live 1,000 lives, and we hope that you can live as many of those as possible. So that doesn't necessarily have to be by reading multiple books. First tip, don't do too much straight up. Ease yourself into it. My next suggestion is to make sure that when you're reading lots of different books at the same time, read from different genres. That'll help you to separate the books from one another and not get mixed up with plot lines or start, thinking that characters from one story are in the same. If you start reading 3 different young adult fantasy novels with similar kind of tropes, sort of similar kind of character traits, I guarantee that you're going to get muddled. Even an experienced multiple book reader like me would start to get muddled if I'm doing that. So here's an example of my currently reading pile. I have On Looking, which is a non-fiction book. I have The Sudden Appearance of Hope, which is an adult science fiction / urban fantasy style novel. I have my reread of Harry Potter because it's Harry Potter, and I have A Little Life, which is an adult contemporary novel. I'm also listening to an audiobook at the moment, which is the 3rd book in a science fiction series. And I think that having these different genres really helps me to separate out those stories and not get mixed up, because the characters who are in A Little Life are very, very different to the characters that I'm reading about in Harry Potter. And when I pick up Harry Potter, I know that I'm delving into this wizarding world, and I know that I'm absorbed in that world. Whereas when I am reading A Little Life, I know that I'm back in New York in the current day, and it really plunges me back and helps me with that immersive experience of reading. My 3rd tip is to read, if possible, in multiple formats. I find that really helps me to differentiate the different books from one another. And I'm not talking about physical books in terms of paperbacks versus hardcovers. I don't think that the physical feeling of that book is going to make a huge amount of difference. I really love audiobooks. They allow me to listen to stories and to catch up on my reading while I'm walking to work, while I'm out shopping, on public transport, doing cooking, doing awful boring adult things like cleaning the house. And I find that that's really useful. Also having a narrator's voice really helps me to be immersed in that story. I also sometimes read ebooks either on my Kindle or on my phone, and I find that having those different kinds of platforms help me to differentiate between the books as well. It also just makes it easier. I'm reading in different moods, or I have different feelings. So yeah, I want to go and read outdoors today, and I don't want to carry this really big, heavy paperback around, or I don't want to take my hardcover copy, 1st edition of Harry Potter to the park with me or to the beach. So it's great to have a Kindle to do that, or of course you can read on your phone or any other device. So I definitely recommend trying that out as well. And my last piece of advice about reading multiple books is don't feel pressured to read all of them at the same speed. You don't have to read 5 pages of Harry Potter and then 5 pages of A Little Life and then 25 pages of A Sudden Appearance of Hope. So quick, you better read some of the others. I think it's really important to go at your own pace, and reading multiple books is great like that because I find it allows me to read based on my mood. So if I'm feeling like I want something really intense and emotional and I have a big chunk of time to set aside, I'm going to pick up A Little Life. It's the kind of book that needs me to be really, really emotionally involved in it. It's not something I can read a page or two at a time. Whereas Harry Potter, this has got to be my 6th or 7th reread of A Goblet of Fire, which is my favorite book in the series. I'm fine with reading just maybe a chapter or a couple of pages of this before I go to sleep every night. It just kind of brings me back, settles me down, calms me down before I go to sleep, and I love just reading a page or two of this here and there. I'm not going to lose track of the thread of the story. I've read this book so many times before, so this is like a comfort read for me. But if I'm feeling really excited about it, or if I'm reading the section about the Yule Ball, which is my favorite, I'm probably going to read a big chunk of this over the weekend. So be okay with reading, a little bit here and there, and depending on what your mood is. A perfect example of this is On Looking. I have been reading this nonfiction book since around about February this year. I'm going through this so slowly, and I've started and finished lots of other books since I started this, but I still consider this to be on my currently reading pile. I've just been picking it up and reading little sections of it, one chapter at a time, whenever I'm in the mood for something, which is this kind of style, which is very academic. It's very thoughtful and thought-provoking, and it's not the kind of book that you want to sit down and read in one sitting. So I think this is perfect for someone like me who loves reading multiple books, and who is okay with taking 6 months or even maybe a year to finish a single book and finishing lots of others in the meantime. Those are my tips for reading multiple books and some of the justification for why I love reading multiple books. It's a great solution for someone like me who's definitely a mood reader, and who picks things up based on how they're feeling and what kind of style of book they're looking for. Multiple times in a day, sometimes I'll pick up different bits of different books. I know that not everyone reads like that, and I'd love to hear what your reading habits are in the comments below. If any of these tips have helped you to try out reading multiple books, even if that's just going from one book to maybe reading 2 at the same time, I would love to hear how this has helped you out. Or if you think that my ideas are terrible, please let me know that too. I would always love to hear from you. So that's it from me for today, and happy reading!